Let's talk about hope. And not the type of hope that's rose colored glasses, um, this kind of hope, chin up, everything is fine, everything will get better, but actually hope that is genuine and that is coming from a deeper place. And I'm having trouble finding my words for it because hope is something that I have had a hard time with for a long time. And so I don't typically talk about it because I've often wondered how well it serves us. It's a bit of a sacred cow to say, because the opposite of having hope is being hopeless. And I'm not that. And so I'm a word nerd and I kind of want to get in there and play with it. But when I talk about having hope, I think what I'm really talking about is how do I frame, and I'm doing this around my head because that's where it happens. That's where I get caught in my thoughts. How do I frame for myself as I'm living through this world that we're in with all the things that are that's happening? How do I frame for myself in a way that has me stay upright, that has me stay whole, that has me stay plugged into the goodness of humanity, that has me plugged into the power, that has me tasting a vision of something other than what is being served to me and fed up to me daily through headlines, through stories. And so let's talk about hope. So here's what I've got. I had a fantastic conversation with a friend just now, and she knows who she is if she's watching this. And I'm so grateful. I got really emotional, but I got really clear, and it felt like it was just the best gift for the holidays. So I'm inspired to share it with you. But I'll begin with a couple stories. I had a really intense week last week. It's the week before I leave for vacation for the holidays, and it's always intense. So I had a full load of clients, and then I also had 2 women's circles. So I have a women's circle Tuesday night with 5 women, and I have a women's circle in person, both of these on Thursday night with 5 people. So that's 10 women coming into my practice, and we do readings, and it's so thoughtful, and we meet one time a month for the dark of the winter season, and I find them deeply nourishing, which is why I keep doing them. And one is sort of my hat hanger signature circle that I've done called On Being a Woman, which really goes through the doorway of woman and gets at a bunch of topics that archetypal topics that classically come up in my work, my one-on-one work with coaching. And I've been doing that. I think this is the 15th time I'm doing this circle. The second circle is only available for women who have gone through the first circle, and that's called Women in Power, where we sort of intersect what it means to be a woman with what it means to lead and to serve and to be to use ourselves in service of the world and everything that goes with that. So 2 really awesome, amazing conversations with women. So I'm taking in all these stories last week of toxic workplaces and bullyish behavior and navigational. I'm working one-on-one with leaders of threading the needle and navigating. Some women are hiring me to get outside the organization and to extricate themselves from positions of leadership, to start their own business, or to just leave and get another job for a variety of reasons. Some women are just staying or navigating, and it's like 2 full-time jobs. You know, one is the job that you're hired to do, and the other is the job of being able to stay whole and stay sane and alive in the work that you're doing, navigating when you're constantly feeling like you don't belong, like you're not valued, like you don't fit in, that you're having to sort of, I had a client use the word, I need to now that I'm an executive, I need to make sure I behave appropriately. And I'm like, what does that mean? So a lot of those intense conversations. And then I go into these 2 women's evening conversations. and they're so juicy. So the first conversation I went into on Tuesday night, the theme was rooting and rising. And we talked about, I drew a picture of a tree, and I talked about the branches rising up and the outward expression, the service, the leadership, the offerings that you put out into the work and then into the world. And then we talked about the root system and how that's where we get nourished, and that's where we get informed, and that's where our intuition and our feelings and our emotions and our collective wisdom lives, that you go underground, but it's dark and it's lonely, but it's also this time of year we're sort of craving it as we go into the cave of winter here in the Northern Hemisphere. And so I'm asking them to respond energetically to the tree, and they're talking about rising, and all of their faces say what I feel. They're like, oh, I'm just so fucking tired of rising. I'm tired of fighting. I'm tired of taking stand. I'm tired of explaining. I'm tired of finding the words, just the right words, and saying it in the right way. And I'm tired of saying it again because you didn't hear me the first 40 times I said it, but now you're ready to hear it. Or, and just tired, pissed, frustrated, done. Like a lot of middle finger energy, and rightfully so. It's year end, all this sort of stuff. And the exhaustion that we have, and how hungry we are to go underneath in the root systems and to retreat and go inside. And then I go into the Thursday night circle, and we're talking about the feminine. And we're talking about it as an adjective, as a noun, when you put the on it, and what is it? When you go through the door of women, you get feminine and masculine. What does that mean? And gender and energy, and really, really thoughtful, exciting, hysterical, moving to tears sort of conversation. And I came home from both of those, my full load of client work, and then those two circles, and I came home and I felt like I'd run the gauntlet because it required a lot of me to hold that space over the course of the week. And I get through the door and I'm hanging up my coat, and I said, well, that mattered to those people, those 5 in that group on Thursday night. And I heard myself say, well, it mattered to them. And it reminded me of the story that gives me hope. And I'm holding up my hands a lot today. And it's cool because here's why. The story is about starfish. And I was telling my friend on the phone, how do I remember this starfish thing? And I looked at my hand and I was like, oh, my hand is like a starfish. So here's the starfish story, if you haven't heard of it in a while. So I'm going to change it. It's usually a grandfather walking on the beach with his grandson. I'm going to tell you the story of a grandmother walking on the beach with her granddaughter. And so they're walking along the beach, and they notice there's like all these starfishes, I guess that's the plural, all over the beach. Like all these starfish, like thousands of them have washed up on the beach. And they're both like, what is going on? All of these starfishes. So the granddaughter starts stooping down and picking up starfish, and one by one she's throwing them back in the ocean. And the grandmother is watching her granddaughter do this at first, like, isn't she cute, isn't she adorable, that she could make a difference. And finally, having not walked far at all, because there's just an impossible situation happening with so many starfish, and the girl is working systematically, throw every single one back in, the grandmother stops her and says, hey, I see what you're doing, but it's kind of pointless. You can't save them all. There's so many of them. You don't have enough time to do this, to save them all. So she's sort of preparing her granddaughter for grief of like, you can't save them all. You can't control it all. It's bigger than you. And you can see the granddaughter take this in my mind's eye as I hear this story. And then she reaches down and grabs a starfish and she throws it out again. And she said, well, it mattered to that one. And I love that story so much because it reminds me of the small things. And that's what my friend and I talked about around the small things mattering. And she focused on that one starfish. It mattered to that one. That one survived. Maybe all these won't be rescued, but that one will. And when I think of all the starfish that are on our beach right now, of the economy, of racial injustice, of violence, of school shootings, of political landscape, and the environment and the earth on which we live, and the state of education, and all the things, all the starfish that are on the beach, our bodies, and the medical access to Medicare and child care, and the divide of the 1% and the 99%, all this sort of stuff that's on our beach. It can be overwhelming, as you well know. And so I think sometimes in these moments, what we hear from each other is you got to rise. You got to play big. And at a moment of complete overwhelm, and I'm not knocking rising, I'm not knocking playing big, but if you hear that phrase, playing big, that lends itself to sort of imposter syndrome. I'm going to talk about that again in another video, because that's really coming up. But there's an incongruence between the call to play big and the exhaustion and the reality of all the starfish on the beach. And I've been thinking of this story because I have this really strong reaction that I didn't understand when people would say, Lael, you're playing small. Or I'll hear clients call me and they're like, I think I'm playing small. And in my mind's eye, I'm like, what's wrong with playing small? I think it was the Dalai Lama who said, if you don't think that small things are capable of change, you've never spent the night in a tent with a mosquito. And who was it? I can't remember the woman who said, the change that happens with a group of concerned citizens who come together. In fact, it's the only thing that has created change. Someone's going to know who said that. But the small things, I mean, look at COVID. A little teeny invisible germ changed the world like overnight. And so small is where it's at these days. And that's where I'm starting to think about shifting my gaze in these moments of overwhelm, and where all I can see, it's like all the starfish on the beach, and we have such a tall order, and this is the moment, and rise. I'm going to start to remember that starfish. I'm going to look at my hand, and I'm going to remember the starfish and see if I can take inspiration from that and say, well, it mattered to that one. It's what I do every Friday when I seek to send out my Friday emails. If what I write it for myself, and when I send it out, if that makes a difference to just one other person, it will have been worth it for me. It always is like, oh, you're the starfish. And of course, it has ripple effects. It's also why I turn off the comments on YouTube or on anything that I put out there, because I want to send out an offering and throw it into the ocean. It's going to matter to that starfish who's going to swim into the ocean and talk with the other starfish. So it creates a ripple effect. Those small things create a ripple effect. It's often through storytelling. It's often through connections. It's often invisible. I had a friend, a dear friend, that once said to me, Lael, your job is to just keep throwing the rocks. Quit looking for the ripples. And I thought that was the best advice I've ever been given, because I am an inherently big woman. I have big energy. I'm 5'10". I take up a lot of space. People typically notice when I come into a room. So I'm a big, loud woman in a world that values big, loud things. And we call that leadership. And I want to do this to myself and focus my gaze on not the big things that I'm doing, but the little things that I'm doing, the one by one starfish. And so I wanted to tell you that story in case it gives you hope, because it reminds me, I don't know if you ever read the book, it's fiction. Kristen Hanna wrote a book called The Nightingale. Such a good book. But when I read that book, there's the nightingale who in World War II, all the planes would go down in France, And this one woman would go into the woods, get the down pilot, and hike them through the Pyrenees in France into occupied France, and hike them into Spain, where they could meet with their other pilots and regroup and keep fighting this war. And she was so understated. She was almost invisible. So much so, and this is based on a true story, the Third Reich and Hitler thought she was a man. They were looking for a man. They could not figure out who this nightingale was, and it was actually a woman. So remember the starfish. That's what I'm going to think about. That's what's giving me hope these days. And so as we finish out this year and we look to a very big year, I think next year in 2024, I am going to carry a starfish in my pocket. And I'm going to think about that one starfish. As long as I can keep throwing out a single starfish, it will make a difference and it matters. And that is what is giving me hope. So I'm offering you that frame. I hope it finds a home in your heart. And I wish you all the best as we head into the darkest night of the year with solstice coming up this week and we turn the page to a new year.